Happy Easter. That's an Easter song. You know, each year when holidays come around, it's an opportunity to remember past holidays. And so I was thinking about my Easters as a child, and I loved Easter growing up. It was just a family time and so much fun. My mom would sew me a new dress for Easter. Yeah. She was, a so-so seamstress, but I loved the dresses. My favorite was a pink dress, long-sleeved, and it had some kind of white texturing in it and kind of creamy, and these creamy stripes of lace on two sides, and I felt like a princess wearing that dress. And my mom would wear, and her friends would wear Easter hats to church on Sunday for Easter, and Dad would bring home the Easter lily for the table. My godmother would always gift me with just these really cool things at Easter, because my birthday is in April too, so kind of combining that. She would buy me these little baskets that were little girl purses, and one was like a tiny little picnic basket with a lid that opened up, and one year it was a wicker rabbit purse, and fun things, fun memories, but I totally loved Easter. I asked John if he had any Easter stories he could remember, my husband John. He said, yeah, let's see, when I was about 4, there was a photograph of me on the front step in my pajamas, covered in measles, holding an Easter egg. So you're probably having memories of your own, good and lovely memories, or maybe not so good, and it's all coming back for a new life this Easter. We had Easter egg hunts, and I don't know if you had that too, but our family held them in the living room. The eggs were hidden in the house, in the living room or dining room, I think, so that the adults could keep track of what we were doing. I don't know. And very sparse. There was maybe a couple jelly beans in each egg. Did you have traditions like that? And have you kept those traditions, or over the years have you changed them and made them something different? We all travel on our spiritual path, and the meaning of Easter and holidays evolve and grow as we evolve and grow. And as each of these traditions and holidays come around again, it's an opportunity for us to dig deeper, to expose ourselves to the stories, to read and listen, and come up with what it means for us today. Maybe a deeper understanding. So many of the Christian holidays have bits and pieces incorporated from other faith traditions, and Easter is like that. Pagan symbols of eggs and bunnies and fertility and the rites of spring equinoxes around this time. And it's also combined with the Jewish holidays, the Jewish Passover tradition, which celebrates life over death and celebrating coming out of bondage and into freedom. And all these traditions are mixed in with the story of Jesus, his death and resurrection. So if you're like me, you maybe wonder about this, what this means. I know over the years I've changed my mind and flip-flopped many times about what it means for me. So Jesus spent the last 3 years of his life teaching. He taught through his words and his actions and just through his presence, his being. He demonstrated love, unconditional love. He was love in action. He demonstrated compassion. He taught and role modeled forgiveness. He accepted everybody, even the outcasts in society, like prostitutes and lepers. He didn't mind being with them. He mingled with the common folks of his time, the farmers and the fishermen. His stories were about seeds and growing things, and about fields and fishing and farming and building, and topics that the common people could relate to. He helped people, even if they were foreigners or outcasts. He honored and valued children and just delighted in interacting with them. And he healed the sick. Now, doesn't that sound like a man we might like to know? When people met him, they knew he was extraordinary. They felt it. And he attracted people to his ministry in 3 ways. Through his words, through his stories and parables that were so meaningful to them, through his powerful affirmations, and through the depth and wisdom of his teachings. He attracted people to his ministry through his actions. Who wouldn't want to go see somebody who could change water into wine? Or heal the sick, or cause the blind to see, or the lame to walk? Incredible stories of healing, raising the dead. He also attracted people to his ministry through the power of his presence. The presence of the Christ within him. The presence that is felt and recognized and experienced by people coming into his vicinity. It was a strong and clear presence of peace, power, and love, and forgiveness. So let's take a look at this Holy Week story. I'm going to just kind of run through this week, this amazing, what a week. 2015 years ago, plus or minus, there was, on the Sunday before Passover, Jewish people traveled into Jerusalem getting ready for the celebrations. They arrived days of that week and stayed with family and friends getting ready to preparing for the Passover. And Jesus and his disciples did the same. They entered Jerusalem on Sunday. And he came in riding on a donkey, which was a symbol of a king, symbolic of a king. It was a festive, joyful occasion. And people laid down their cloaks, and as he rode in, they waved palm branches in the air, singing, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. It was festive. It was a celebration. I heard this story from Reverend Eliza Bloom. I had taken a couple of classes from her at Unity Village way back when, Bible classes, and she's a fascinating storyteller and knows the Bible stories inside and out. But she related this story. One Sunday, a little boy woke up and he was sick. He had a sore throat and running a fever, and so he and his mom stayed home that morning, and the father took the other children to church. And they were gone for a while, and when they came back, the other kids were waving palm branches. And the little boy asked his dad, "What are the palm branches for?" He said, "Well, that's when Jesus comes to town." That's when Jesus comes. And the little boy said, "What? That just figures. The one day I don't go to church, Jesus comes." So this joyful occasion of arriving into Jerusalem. The next day, Jesus went to the temple to pray, to be in communion with Spirit and in this sacred place. And what did he find? I know you know this. Imagine a tourist attraction with tables of wares to sell, and there were money changers, exchanging currencies. There were people selling animals for the sacrifices. There were tax collectors. There was a whole lot of business stuff going on, and he didn't like it at all. And so he knocked over tables and said, "What? This is a house of prayer. What are you doing?" He set some boundaries. He asked some questions and caused people to look at what you're doing. Think about this. That would get some attention, wouldn't it? Knocking over tables. 2,000 years ago, it would get attention today. When he talked, people listened. When he did things like this, people paid attention. Unfortunately, some of the people didn't like what he was doing. He criticized the power structure of the Jewish organization at the time. And I just want to spend a few minutes to give you some background here about that. The Pharisees, they were this strict Jewish sect at the time that really followed their laws precisely and their rituals precisely. They were businessmen. I'm thinking they probably were the ones with the tables set up in the temple. One of the things they did is have little boxes that they would attach to their heads or arms with scripture in them. And when I read that, I thought, well, gosh, that's like putting an affirmation in your pocket, isn't it? But Jesus, was calling them on things, and called them names even, which, doesn't quite resonate with what we think of Jesus being as love, but it's there. And then the Sadducees, well, the people related kind of to the Pharisees, but the Sadducees were the upper class of the time. The wealthy, the aristocrats, and powerful positions. A lot of them were in political powerful positions. They, dealt with the Romans who were in control at the time. And I read that the Sadducees held most of the seats. There were 70 seats on their court system structure, the Sanhedrin, and most of them were held by the Sadducees. So these two groups of powerful Jewish, upper and middle class, didn't like Jesus' message, and it was shaking things up. I can't help but think of the parallels of that to things that are going on right now in our time and in our culture. The power structures that resist change and want to keep things the way they are. Power structures that plot to discredit other people, to get rid of different opinions, to silence voices, and all for the holding on to their possessions and their power or their wealth is why they do that. We can see power structures like that out there, in governments, in families, in some religious organizations, and politics, Wall Street, I don't know, we can see it out there. We can also see it within ourselves, the power structures in our minds that have these beliefs and attitudes that we hold so strongly with this rigid determination that we're unwilling to hear a new voice or to hear a new idea. But in unity we teach that exploring and hearing the new is good. We ask questions, don't we? And we explore and look at things because we know that the truth, that the divine is eternal. And the divine truth is eternal and ever constant, never changes, right? What changes is our understanding about the divine, how we understand that eternal truth. So it's about our growing in our consciousness to realize more and more of the divine. Okay, so that's kind of a sidetrack. Let's go on. This plotting about Jesus is happening. And Jesus goes to a party hosted by Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And while they're there, Mary anoints Jesus' feet. She rubs his feet and cleans his feet and massages his feet with a very expensive oil. And she dries his feet with her hair. And Judas gets mad. He thinks this is a waste of their resources. And says, we could use the money that you spent on that expensive oil to feed the poor. Have you ever had a disagreement about money with a family member or someone you're on a committee with? It sounds familiar, doesn't it? But Judas gets stuck in that attitude and that thinking, and he's irritated and disenchanted with the whole thing, and so he does something that he will later regret. He does something he will regret so much that he ends up killing himself. He agrees to help the chief or high priest get to Jesus when Jesus isn't surrounded by lots and lots of people. Last week I talked a little bit about Palm Sunday. Before the meal, Jesus washed the disciples' feet. And usually servants did that sort of thing, but Jesus did it to show his humility, his devotion to serve other people, and the depth of his love for his companions, the disciples. And that night, after he broke bread and blessed it and they ate their meal, he talked about the things that he foresaw, the difficult things that were just around the corner. And they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to know that Peter was going to deny him 3 times. They didn't want to hear about him dying and coming back, and all that was frightening to them. So he comforted them and told them to trust God, trust me. And later that night they walked to the Mount of Olives, and there they went to Gethsemane, which was a grove of olive trees. And Jesus wanted to pray. And he wanted the disciples to pray too. But he kind of wanted to be apart from them. So he asked them to stay awake tonight, pray, let's all pray. And then he went apart to pray. And he came back after a while, and of course they were all asleep. Wake up! Let's pray! And then Jesus went off to pray again, and center in spirit, and came back, and the disciples were asleep. Wake up! How like this is like us, isn't it? It's a call to wake up, to and hear the call, to remember who we are, the beautiful divine presence of light and love that we are, and we keep falling asleep. Wake up and remember. Wake up and pray. Wake up and be that Christ. So he goes away again to be by himself to pray, and of course they fall asleep again. He comes back the 3rd time to awaken them, and now the crowd is there with swords and clubs, and they arrest Jesus. And I think it's Peter that grabs his sword. Is it Peter? One of the disciples grabs his sword and actually cuts off somebody's ear. And, Jesus is arrested, but he takes the time to reattach and get one more healing. And then the disciples scatter, and Jesus goes off arrested. And, the story is grim from here. He's tried, he's mocked, he's beaten, lots of things happen to him, and he's crucified, and he dies. I don't know why we call Good Friday, the day that he dies. I just don't understand that. After he died, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate, who's the Roman governor of Judea at this time, if he could remove Jesus' body off the cross and make some burial preparations for him before the Sabbath starts. The Sabbath will start at sundown on Friday and go till sundown the next day. So Nicodemus bought 100 pounds, it says, of myrrh and aloe, and Joseph brought this linen, and the 2 men wrapped the body in all these spices and linens according to their burial customs. And they placed Jesus in an empty tomb. And for safekeeping, they rolled a very large stone in front of the tomb, and more safekeeping Roman guards were posted at the tomb so that no one would disturb the body while everyone was observing the Sabbath. I neglected to say that there are many stories of Easter in the Bible, and some of them contradict one another. And so I'm kind of conglomerating this, I guess. This version now with Mary, early Sunday morning. It's still dark out, and Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb. And Mary knows Jesus. Mary's been with Jesus. Mary's, a disciple of Jesus in many people's minds. She went there and found that the stone had been rolled away, looked inside, and the body's missing. She's panicked and scared and so grief-stricken. She runs to get the disciples to tell them what's going on. 2 of the disciples follow her back and see for themselves, and they're all in a state of turmoil, wondering where is Jesus? What's happened here? The disciples leave, and Mary stays at the tomb, and she's weeping. can imagine the grief. I can't imagine what his followers and disciples went through during their Passover celebration. It must have been really a difficult time. So she's weeping, and two angels appear to her. And they ask her, "Why are you weeping? They've taken my Lord, and I do not know where they've laid him." And then she feels a presence of someone behind her. She turns and sees a man standing there. She thinks he's the gardener. And she says, "Sir, if you've taken his body, please tell me. Let me know where you've laid him." Now she knows Jesus, but she thinks he's the gardener. And he says to her, "Mary." And then she knows something about his words, something about his presence, and she says, "Rabboni," which means teacher. It was him. Now, that just fascinates me. How could she not recognize him at first when she turned around? And he said something like, don't touch me, I'm not ready for that. So Jesus was resurrected and appeared not in his old body, which was broken and beaten. He appeared in some new form that he was barely holding together. He said, "Don't touch me." The eternal divine essence within Jesus. What happened? Did he create a new body, a new energetic body that he showed up in? He rose up from the tomb. He died and he rose up. He resurrected himself into this new form. And if we look at this story strictly as mythology and not literally, what truth can we find? We'll take a moment to explore that. Can we relate to situations in life where we die to an old life? Times when things are dark and dire, or we might feel like we've died or been put in a tomb. Times of deep grieving, when we've lost a dear loved one, times when a marriage is broken up, times of severe illness or rejection, betrayal, devastating loss, accidents, situations of natural disasters, violence. All of those kinds of things can cause us to shut down and enter into a tomb, a dark night of the soul. And those times we might feel like we're dead inside. We certainly are dead to the way things used to be. There was just one day, that Saturday, where Jesus' dead body laid in the tomb. It's a time, I compare it to like a caterpillar, in a cocoon, a period of process, a necessary time of transformation. So those deep, dark places that we go to and then emerge as a new creation. A butterfly, something entirely new and unrecognizable. We digest our experiences in those deep, dark places, and then we come out with new understanding, new depth, new wisdom, purpose, clarity. We are reborn. We transcend the tomb of our own dark night and come out transformed. One spring day years ago, when my son Nick was, 10 or so, we were in the backyard and he noticed just a whole bunch of little bitty dragonflies, the tiny, really skinny, thin kind, and they were on our dock. And butterflies, dragonflies, when they're little nymphs in the water. And so they had come up onto the ground, onto earth, and found their way, some of them to the dock and some of them on the land. And they were shedding that nymph body and emerging with this new body. And they were sunning themselves, letting this external skeleton dry and harden in the sun so that their wings would fly. And it was fascinating. There were hundreds of them. And we just laid on our bellies and watched. But I felt like they were saying too, don't touch me, I'm not ready. You know? They were crawling, yeah. I don't think we ever saw any fly away, but we knew that would be coming soon. So Easter is the story of hope and transformation. It's a story of life, of rebirth and growth. It's a story of moving on beyond what once was into something new. Easter tells us that we are eternal beings, spiritual beings, much more than these bodies that we're going to shed, much more than Easter dresses that we outgrow. Our experiences, our losses, our dark times in the tomb are necessary for our spiritual unfoldment. And the Easter story promises us that when we enter a dark and scary place, we're going to come out. And we're going to come out changed. We're going to come out more alive, more aware. We will emerge. When we die to the old, we emerge as a new creation, wiser, with more consciousness, with more light, with more wisdom. We are more awake after something like that. More awake than we've ever been before. So this morning, I'll ask you to wake up. Wake up. Wake up to that beautiful divine light that's born every day in you and in me. We are the light of the world. Jesus taught us that. Easter morning and every morning of our lives. We are the light. Happy Easter. God bless you. Namaste.